Okay, this is part three of the Defending the Undefendable conversations, and we are glad to have Professor Walter Block of Loyola University to the show once again. We've discussed book one and book two, and now we're doing book three. Walter, welcome to the show once again. It's always great to have
Thanks.
you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I believe you mentioned in one of our previous discussions that you're going to have book four ready at some point in the future. So to the extent that you can tell us, what will book four entail?
Ah, I'm not sure. I'm up in the air. Um, let's do book three. Um, let me. I'm not prepared for book four, but I'm prepared for book three. Uh, there is one that's sort of pretty shocking. I forget which one it is. Maybe the. I don't. I forget whether I did the voluntary slave owner. Did I already do that one? You know more about this than I do.
Oh yeah, it's a chapter in book three, so we're going to discuss it yeah
Okay.
during
Well,
the duration of this conversation.
Well, then I can't put it in book four. I don't want to repeat myself.
Okay,
Uh, let's stick to book three.
of course. But nevertheless, I look forward to the release of book four.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like to ask also about the use of cartoons throughout, not just this book, but all the other books in the Defending the Undefendable series. They are very humorous and they're very illustrative of the chapters in question. So, tell me about how do you use them?
Well, the way I got it, I saw this cartoon by Rodriguez, who unhappily passed away since. But then again, I started this in the 1970s. And I forget the exact thing, but there was this two men, and one man saying, she won't listen to me, she'll listen to you, you're her pimp. And that's her father. Namely, the daughter won't listen to her father, but she'll listen to her pimp. And I figured, whoa, this would be a great illustration for legalizing the pimp. And I mean, the pimp has got a bad press. Everyone hates the pimp, but to me, the pimp is just a an agent for an actress. And the actress here not only acts giving away sex, but actually does it in case of the prostitute. So I wrote to him and I said, I've got a whole book. That was defending one. And can you illustrate other chapters? And he said, well, I don't know. I'm not sure. What do you want? And I said, look, you just draw whatever you feel. And you don't have to illustrate every chapter, but just, draw it. And he did many, many that I couldn't use in book one. But happily, I could use them in book two and book three. And I think I still have a few more Rodriguez cartoons that I never used in the first three, and I can stick into the fourth book.
Okay.
I mean, I paid him for all of them, but I didn't use them all, and I've got them tucked away somewhere, so I might be illustrating book four. Um, I mean, most books don't have most serious philosophical books don't have cartoons in them. But I don't know. I'm also a fan of George Stigler, who is a famous Chicago economist who won a Nobel Prize in economics. And every once in a while, in the most serious essays, he would stick in a joke. And I thought that was charming. I mean, life is too short not to enjoy humor. And I am a big fan of having fun and humor. And why not? Why not stick in a cartoon? Even, I mean, I'm not going to compare this with Human Action or Murray's book for a New Liberty or the Ethics of Liberty or anything like that. But if there were cartoons in those books, it wouldn't bother me one bit. And I think the books would have been better for it. It would have attracted discussion, more discussion than without the cartoons. So I make no apology for sticking in cartoons in a book that I regard, or a series of books that I regard as very serious. On the other hand, I forget how many books I've now published, something like 32, 33. The number keeps changing. And the only books that have cartoons in them are are Defending series. So maybe I should be more logically consistent and start putting cartoons in all of my books. I never thought of that. So I thank you for helping me think along those lines. I'm not sure I will, but I might. And I never thought of doing that before our discussion.
Mhm. Well, I welcome the addition of cartoons and animation in the books. As a graduate student, I have to do like a lot of reading, so I always welcome it when, a reading passage or a page has a picture, so that means no words and doesn't have you don't have to read that much.
I hear you.
So I I'd like to ask also whether the Defending series have been used as teaching material for your classes and whether students enjoy reading them, especially the cartoons.
Yeah, I have used it in my intro classes. I don't use it in my advanced classes. Um, let me rephrase that. I used to, but then I got the idea that it's sort of unfair. No, that's not true. Boy, am I mixed up today. Um, I it seems too pushy, and I'm a pushy person, but even too pushy for me to compel students to read my books. So I'm sort of a little reluctant. So I haven't done it as much as I could have. I mean, I teach 4 or 5 different classes, intro and intermediate micro, law and economics, um, environmental economics, labor economics, economics and religion. Uh, and I've written many books, and many of them could have been stuck into the reading list of some of these classes, but I haven't done as much of that because I sort of feel it's sort of a little untoward to uh, push my stuff at my students. If they want to read my stuff, they can do it on their own, was my thinking. But I haven't been consistent on that. Sometimes I have used Defending in my intro classes.
That's it. Okay. Well, I'm sure they enjoyed reading it as much as I do.
Thank you.
So Defending Tree, I find the prose writing it's a much more relaxed and much more humorous than
Oh,
the past two books. I would assume that Defending Tree is for people who already know the first two Defending books. So you have a ready audience there who knows your assumptions and know your prose style. So I wonder if that's the intent.
well, Defending One came out in 1976, I think, when I was a very young man. I was born in 41, so I was 35 then when it came out, and I was maybe 31 when I was writing this stuff. It takes a while to get a book published. And I never read, I've looked at all three subsequently, but I've never looked at them with the view of has my writing style improved or not. It's interesting. Uh, they say that with regard to age, and these three books came out over decades, different decades. They say that people who make contributions to math and physics and chemistry, they sometimes get awarded a Nobel Prize when they're 75, but they get the award for stuff they did when they were 23. Namely, if you're heavily into math, you have a time limit on your life. Namely, your high productive years are in your 20s and 30s, and then it sort of tails off. However, for literary stuff, history, philosophy, literature, there is no big tail off. And some people say it's a slight increase. I'm now 83. Defending Three was written in my 70s, and Defending Four will be written while I'm in my 80s. So I think I'm lucky that I chose a field, not mathematics and not physics, where my productivity would tail off, but more philosophical literary stuff where my productivity would not tail off. And I'm delighted that you say that book three reads better than books one and two, which shows that I'm not losing it, at least not stylistically. On the other hand, my critics say getting senile. But then again, they've been saying that ever since I was 25. So I have to deprecate that criticism.
So I'm guessing the senile criticism is in some ways a mark of respect then.
Well, it's more a criticism of the not the style, but the substance. Namely, I'm out to lunch. I'm an idiot. Libertarianism couldn't possibly have this implication, and libertarianism itself is crazy. Those would be the substantive criticisms. I don't think I've ever had any criticisms of the style. I mean, I've had many critics of the book. This is idiotic, this is moronic, but it's more the substance. Nobody's ever said, "Well, my God, he can't write his way out of a paper bag."
Yeah, it's well the style, I have no complaints regarding the style. I can just read the book. I just fly through the chapters in a matter of minutes and hours. So as an aside, I'd like to mention the fact that while I was preparing for this discussion, I came across a report or an article by the Foundation of Individual Rights in Education, FIRE, and it was written like 3 or 4 years ago, and it details the troubles that you've encountered with your university, Loyola. So, as someone who went through these kinds of, administrative nightmares, I can sympathize with that. So, to the extent that you can tell us about what happened, you're welcome to.
Well, this is actually on one of the chapters in this book, the voluntary slavery. What happened was I was being interviewed by the New York Times, and this was in 2015. And I didn't realize that the hidden agenda of them was to show that Rand Paul is a moron. Why? And Rand Paul in 2015 was a strong contender for the presidency, candidacy in the Republican Party for president. And they wanted to show that he was out to lunch. How were they going to do that? They were going to interview 10 or 15 people, among them me, saying that he hangs around with me or us 12 or 15 people, and we're crazy, and therefore he's crazy. I didn't realize that that was the hidden agenda. They just said, we want to interview about libertarianism. So, New York Times wants to interview me about libertarianism. I'm going to say no. So I started in, non-aggression principle and private property rights based on homesteading and free association, the usual stuff. And yes, we're neither left nor right. We should also get rid of minimum wage and rent control on the right. So we libertarians are neither right nor left. And I was giving them the usual stuff, and they just weren't getting it. And later I learned the reason they were bright guys, but they were acting as if they couldn't understand what was going on. Why? Because they hadn't got a gotcha moment yet. Because legalizing getting rid of the minimum wage and promoting free trade is hardly something that you could use to say that Rand Paul is an idiot. So they just weren't getting it. So I figured I would use the atom bomb of libertarianism, voluntary slavery. And the idea here is uh, you, Chung, are a very rich man. You're as rich as Bill Gates and Elon Musk put together. And God forbid my son has a horrible disease and is going to die unless we pay $50 million to save his life. And I don't have anything like 50 million. That happens to be true. I don't have anything like 50 million. And yet I value his life more than my freedom. So I make a deal with you. You give my son's doctors the 50 million and I'll come and I'll be your slave. I'll come to your plantation. I'll pick cotton. I'll give you economics lessons. And I would be a slave of yours. And if you tortured me or killed me, well, maybe not tortured. I'd put in the contract, you can't torture me, but you could kill me. And if you killed me, it would be like killing one of your sheep or horses or a cow or a chicken because I would be solely owned by you. I'm no longer a self-owner. I sold myself. And the idea here is that We both benefit. I benefit because I value my son's life more than my freedom or my life. You benefit because you value my servitude more than a stinking lousy 50 million, which is nothing to you because you're very rich. And we make a deal and we both benefit. And now the question is, should this be legal? And I said that among libertarians, this is a very contentious issue, but in my view, it should be legal. And now they have got a gotcha moment because what they did is they quoted me as favoring actual slavery, uh, coercive slavery, involuntary slavery, where people grab each other, kidnap each other, and compel them to do work and then kill them, and they're not murderers. This is just horrible. And that was like on page one, on paragraph five. And then in paragraph 19, they sort of took this back and they said, well, he didn't really mean actual slavery, he meant voluntary slavery. But who's going to read paragraph 19? In paragraph five, I'm out there favoring actual slavery, which is an abomination, which is practically what, the second worst thing that man can do to man? The first thing would be mass murder. This is horrible. So the president of my university, he doesn't call me in. I tell you, Chong, if you were a professor and I was the president of the university and you were quoted as saying that slavery was okay, I would call you into my office and say, please tell me you were misquoted. This guy didn't call me into his office. He just wrote a thing in the student newspaper saying, well, Bloch favors slavery, but slavery is wrong. It's against Jesuit principles. I'm at a Jesuit school. And then 500 students signed a petition saying that I should be fired because I favor slavery. Happily, a former student of mine then got another petition going, explaining exactly what I said. And he got 5,000 students or 5,000 people saying, no, I should be given a raise. I was never given a raise, but I wasn't fired either. I have tenure. So that sort of protected me. So one of the chapters in this book is saying that the voluntary slavery contract is legit, or that the voluntary slave owner is compatible with libertarianism. Now, the argument against this, and by the way, this is sort of a minority position among libertarians. I think the only people beside me that really favor this is Robert Nozick. But Murray Rothbard and a whole bunch of other people say no, it's illegitimate because you can't alienate the will. Even though I'm your slave now, I'm back on your plantation. I still think, and I still, want to run away maybe, or if I'm honorable, I realize I can't run away because it was a contract. But I still own my will. You can't control my will. I can think what I want. And I say, will Schmill, I don't care about the will. The question is, when you kill me, are you a murderer? Yes or no? It's a yes or no question, got nothing to do with the will. And my answer is, you're not a murderer when you kill me because I contracted my life away. Look, we have this thing called assisted suicide. You're my friend. I'm now very old and I'm in excruciating pain, but I'm so weak that I can't commit suicide. And I ask you to give me a pill or, do something to kill me. Are you a murderer? Oh, you're not a murderer. You're helping me commit suicide because the drugs no longer solve the excruciating pain, and I'm just in excruciating pain 24/7. And I ask you as a friend to put me out, and you do. You're not a murderer. So just because one person kills another person doesn't make him a murderer. Certainly not in the assisted suicide case, and also in the voluntary slavery case. So it seems to me to be very clear that the will has got nothing to do with this, and that you should not be considered a murderer when you kill me because I gave my life to you. Look, right now, this shirt, I have a shirt here. And what can I do with the shirt? Well, I could sell it. I could wear it. I could use it to mop up spills or what. I could use it in many ways. And now you tell me I can't sell it. I can keep it, but I can't sell it. Well, to that extent, my ownership of the shirt is a little attenuated because before you passed this law that I couldn't sell it, I could sell it, and I really owned 100% of it. Now I own less than that. Well, it's the same thing with me, right? Right now I can do a lot of things with this body, but one of the things I can't do, it's illegal, is to sell it. Well, then to that extent, I own myself less than I would own it if I could also sell it. So by prohibiting voluntary slave contracts, you are attenuating ownership of people over themselves.
Mhm. Well, that's a lot to take in, and I know that there's a lot more that's mentioned in the fire report, and there's the question of supporting one's freedom of speech and academic freedom to you know to say one's ideas, and another to critically engage with them, and in fact, one is necessary for the other. So, I'm not the New York Times. I don't take people's quotes out of context. But that doesn't mean that I won't engage with them critically, because well, one, I'm a Catholic person, so the idea of slavery, involuntary or not, is it's just morally abhorrent to me, and also the idea of assisted suicide too. I'm sure being in a Jesuit college named after Saint Ignatius of Loyola, you know all these ethical principles already. Um, Nevertheless, I suppose the idea of a voluntary slave contract in itself, like contrary to the Constitution, it says, you know, yeah, on the phrases inalienable rights, and also the 13th Amendment, which articulates that. So I wonder, by defending the voluntary slave contract, are you going against the Constitution itself?
Sure, the hell with the Constitution. What's his name? Spooner wrote a brilliant essay, which I am using in my law and economics class, The Constitution of No Authority, something like that. The Constitution was not a unanimous agreement. Look, when I bought this shirt, there was unanimous contract between me and the seller of the shirt. Not everybody signed the Constitution. I think only John Hancock and 15 other people signed it. If the Constitution, and look, the Constitution is a pretty good document. It's very libertarian. But when the Constitution diverges from libertarianism, uh, I stick with libertarianism. Look, you say the contract is immoral. Well, how moral is it that my son dies? If I can't sign that contract, my son dies. He's got this disease that will cost 50 million a cure. And if you say it's immoral and therefore the law should prohibit it, my son dies. I don't think that's terrifically moral. But look, I don't have to convince you of this. I'm delighted that you interviewed me about this. We don't have to agree on everything. We can still be friendly, even though we disagree. But when you say it's immoral to do this, I just think of my son dying, and that doesn't really grab me very much. I want to save him. Good parents value the lives of their kids more than their own lives, and um, that's how I feel about it. I have a daughter. The same with my daughter. I would give my life for hers. I think, and to say that I can't, and to say that it's on moral grounds, well, different people have different views on morality. And about assisted suicide, I have stage 4 terminal cancer. The morphine no longer helps. I'm just in excruciating pain. And I have to suffer for another 5 years like that. What did I do wrong that I have to suffer for 5 years? It doesn't seem to me to be improper. Look, I'm a libertarian. I'm not a Catholic. I'm not religious at all. But I'm a libertarian. And according to libertarianism, the only thing that's prohibited is a violation of rights. Well, how did I violate my rights by wanting to end my life when I'm just in excruciating pain? But again, as I say, we don't have to agree, and I'm delighted to have you as my interviewer.
Mhm. Yes, and it's not my intent to stage a debate on any of these topics, because
That's
each one
okay.
of the chapters, and I counted, I believe there are like 50 of them, can be a topic of debate, and to elaborate on these would take hours, if not days. But uh, I wonder, to what extent do you believe a libertarian can be a Catholic and vice versa? A Catholic can be a libertarian.
Well, I'm not that knowledgeable about Catholicism. I was brought up Jewish. But on the other hand, I know that there are many Catholics who are libertarians. Lou Rockwell is a staunch Catholic and he's a libertarian, and there are Jews who are staunch libertarians. All libertarianism says, libertarian is just a theory of what is just law. And it says just law should punish people who initiate violence against others without their permission. Boxing is okay. If we agree to box and I hit you in the nose, that's not a rights violation because you've given me the right to punch you in the nose and vice versa. Or even sadomasochism. If that's the way people want to operate, between consenting adults, what the heck? So libertarianism just says the only thing that should be against the law, murder, rape, theft, arson, kidnapping, fraud, things like that, and everything else should be legal. That's all it says. Now, I don't see why a belief in a higher power would contradict that. You could say that, well, that was God's will. God wanted us to keep our mitts to ourselves unless we had the permission of other people to grab them. And it seems to me to be perfectly compatible with any religion. But then again, I'm not really an expert on religion, so I speak under correction on this. But I do note that there are many libertarians who are Catholics, who are Jews. Dean Ahmad, a buddy of mine, is Islamic and he's a libertarian. So I argue from experience, empirical evidence shows that people who are staunch believers in religion are also libertarians and eminent libertarians. So I see no contradiction.
Yes. I suppose there are certain compatibilities between the two philosophies in that, Catholics as well as other religious people believe in a power that's higher than that of the state. So whenever the state contradicts, say, um, religious teachings of God's law, they're free to contradict it or disobey it. But of course, on the other hand, if libertarian principles oppose Catholic teachings, then I have no choice but to stick to the catechism. I believe I did interview a Catholic libertarian or a libertarian who's a Catholic on the topic of Ludwig von Mises. Oh my God, embarrassingly enough, I cannot remember his name, but he's associated with the Mises Institute. I'll dig up the episode and send it to you after we finish talking
Hey,
about.
you're getting senile. I'm
Yes,
being
I am. Yes, I
I'm
am.
being
I
silly.
must admit. I must admit that. It's okay. So since you mentioned Rockbart, and I should forget to say should not forget to say that hopefully the situation with you and the college, the university, it's working in your favor and that you're happily teaching and for the time being.
Well, I'm still here. I haven't been fired yet. There's a new president on board who had nothing to do with this, and I have no problems with him. So I'm hoping that the situation at Loyola will be continuing. On the other hand, I've been there since 2001. That's 24 years. And I might as well put in a commercial here, and that is that I'm always looking for good students. And if you're a high school student or a college student who wants to transfer, or you have grandchildren who are that age, I'm a libertarian and an Austrian economist, and I have good colleagues and good students. So if you're thinking of going to a college, think of Loyola University.
Okay, yeah. I certainly hope that those who listen to this show take up that invitation. Um, I'm also reminded since I'm brought up the fire report that you did a chapter in the first defending the undefendable on the academic freedom denier. So I suppose these are somewhat related topics. So how can you square the fact that academic freedom has its limits to the fact that right now or a few years ago, FIRE is defending your virtually unlimited academic freedom to, um, you know, propagate your libertarian philosophical worldview.
Well, it's all a matter of contract. I'm going to set up Walter Block University. And in Walter, and I'm going to hire you as one of my professors. And in Walter Block University, you have to go like this. You have to bow down to me. You have to agree with everything I say. Uh, have I violated any rights? No. I mean, it's a stupid university. Nobody's going to come there unless I really pay them big to come to my university. No accrediting agency is going to accredit my university. Uh, but but did I violate any rights? No, I didn't violate any rights. Every article you write has to include me, and whenever you speak about politics, you have to say what a great guy I am and how important my contribution is. And by the way, I'm going to pay you triple what you could get anywhere else, and you become my professor. There's no rights violation. Therefore, the denial of academic freedom is not a per se rights violation. Look, what would plumbing freedom be? Now my faucet is broken, and I call you in as a plumber, and I say, please fix my faucet. And you say, well, look, I have plumbing freedom. I'll fix whatever I damn well please. What's that? You can't have plumbing freedom. uh, or at least not contractually. Now, if that's the way you want to be, you could be a plumbing freedom person. Fine. God bless you. You fix whatever you want. But you're not going to satisfy your customers if you don't fix what they want, the plumbing apparatus that they want to be fixed. Well, it's the same thing with academic freedom. Look, take a Catholic university like Loyola, and suppose that they have a rule that you can't besmirch Catholicism. You can't say that Catholicism is the work of the devil or something like that. Um, well, that's the contract. And if you don't want to be a professor at the Catholic university that says that, don't be a professor there. But if you want to be a professor and they say you can have any academic freedom you want, just don't be saying that Catholicism is the work of the devil. Well, then you have to abide by it because of contract. And therefore, academic freedom is not like the freedom not to be punched. The freedom to be not be punched unless you give it up, as in boxing, is total. Namely, if I come across you in the street and I punch you, I'm guilty of assault and battery. Whereas if I hire you to be a professor and I limit your academic freedom in some ways, look, you're a chemist. You do chemistry. You're a professor of chemistry, let's say, and Catholicism doesn't have any views on chemistry that I can think of. There's no Catholic way to break up an atom or anything like that. So you now become a professor at a Catholic university, and you don't have full academic freedom because you can't say that Catholicism is evil. And you don't care because you're a chemist and the issue never even arises. And also, you're a Catholic, so you're not going to do that anyway. So all I'm saying is that academic freedom is has to play second fiddle to contract. It can be abrogated.
Mhm. That's it. Well, I suppose this has obviously present day implications because there's the matter of whether the DEI has a place in university, and there was a time when that umbrella of programs is antithetical to academic freedom because they believe that whatever academic views that contradict DEI should not be voiced or propagated. So I would assume that that is the reason why you got into the trouble that you got into. But on the other hand, if if Donald Trump say, gets his way fully, then all publicly funded universities must not have DEI programs. So you know, that in itself is also a violation of academic freedom since, if you're an academic then and you practice DEI and you research into these topics, then you won't get grants and you won't get funds. So what's your view on this? And I wonder, in the decades since the chapter has been written, have you revised your views at all on this?
Well, by the way, first of all, DEI, you know what it stands for?
Diversity, equity, inclusion. Yeah, something like
No, 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 no. Didn't earn it.
that. Of course, that's better.
Uh, I have to correct you. When you're wrong, you're wrong. Um, um, Donald Trump was elected president of the country. And to the extent that the president of the country has a power over public universities, he can do whatever he damn well pleases, at least according to my understanding of the Constitution. So if he says that Columbia University is too DEI and too anti-Semitic, and we're going to cut back on $400 million, well, that's his decision. You don't like him, don't vote for him, or in 2 years, vote for a Democratic Congress, which will support DEI. Uh, so look, if I can have Walter Block University, where everyone has to say how great a guy I am, he could do that with public universities, but no, he's not doing it with private universities. Private universities, if they want to do DEI, they can do DEI. But you see, it's not really a matter of DEI because look, I'm a libertarian. You can imagine what my views on DEI are. It's just discrimination against merit. Uh, so if I were allowed to teach DEI, Donald Trump would be very happy with the way I teach it. Right? So there's nothing wrong with teaching DEI. It's rather the problem with the universities is not whether they can teach DEI or not. The problem with the universities is that they're virtually all lefty professors. There was this Sodom and Gomorrah test. What's the Sodom and Gomorrah test? God was going to kill everyone in the towns of Sodom and Gomorrah. And an angel went to God and said, God, please don't kill them. If I can find 10 righteous people, uh, save Sodom and Gomorrah. And God said, okay. I'm putting this in my own words, as you can appreciate. So the angel goes to Sodom and Gomorrah looking for 10 righteous people, and he can't find them. So God smites Sodom and Gomorrah, according to the Bible. Well, what's the Sodom and Gomorrah test at a university? The Sodom and Gomorrah test at a university is you go to Harvard, can you find 10 professors who are either conservative or libertarian and not lefties? And the answer is no. Harvard fails the Sodom and Gomorrah test. I think they have 3,000 professors and they can't come up with 10 who are uh, libertarian or conservative, namely not Marxist lefties. My own school, Loyola University, can't pass that. We don't have 10 professors out of about 300 professors who are either conservative or libertarian. So the problem with universities is not so much that they're discussing DEI or Marxism, it's that they're all a bunch of lefties, virtually. Not every last one of them. I'm not a lefty. I'm a libertarian. So to approach this and say, well, look, you can't discuss DEI, I think it's the wrong way to go about cleansing the Augean stables or draining the swamp. I think what we need is affirmative action. God forbid, God help me, for conservative and libertarian professors. Instead of letting these people replicate themselves, let's get some intellectual diversity. They want skin color diversity, they want gender diversity, sex diversity. They don't want ideological diversity. They want to keep it as a pretty much wholly owned monopoly of leftism on the college campuses. And happily, there's Hillsdale and Grove City College, which are very different. Namely, they allow conservatives and libertarian, and probably they go too much in the other direction. I don't think they allow lefties there. To me, a good university would have all sorts of shades of opinion and would allow debate and would very much look askance at what they did to Charles Murray at Westbury College. They wouldn't let him speak, and they even injured a professor who was trying to help him. And the same thing with Columbia making it a Jew-free zone or whatever the Zionist-free zone. That was pretty despicable.
Right. And of course, that leads neatly into chapter 12 of Defending Tree, the diversity demeanor. And yes, we're discussing that. I suppose there are two versions of diversity that's being advocated by either one of us. So the didn't earn it crowd, as you've rightly called them, says that we should have like diversity of skin color and gender and such. And apparently, it's the same model that applied to this survey that I did that was produced by UPenn regarding my podcast. That says that over the past 10 or so episodes, 2/3 of my audience are male. So 2/3 of my guests are males, and 3/4 of them are white, and uh, they're all part of the same age bracket, so uh, 50 and over or something like that. And there's that kind of diversity, but there's also the kind of diversity that you've suggested in the realm of ideological and philosophical. So a university can have a whole batch of people from the political spectrum or stripes, anarchists, communists, socialists, liberals, centrists, conservatives, arch conservatives, libertarians, so on and so forth. So I wonder, can both of these models exist within a certain institution, or if we uphold one, then the other must go?
Well, they are different. I mean, skin color is well, I was going to say skin color is irrelevant, but it's not really because black people vote a majority lefties. So therefore, there's a correlation between skin color and ideology. And um, to me, what a good university is just as you explained, having a diversity of opinion, just from every element, and no freezing out of any perspectives. Whereas if you want to have a black lefty and a lesbian lefty and an old lefty and a young lefty and have diversity that way, well, that's not a good education for students. Uh, just to have all lefties, but diversified on age and sex and gender and this and that and the other, that's roughly what we now have. And this is a cesspool, an intellectual cesspool, where certain views are just not allowed. I was once on the diversity committee of the Loyola University, New Orleans, and there were maybe 15 of us in the room. And I said, look, you guys all favor diversity of sex and gender and race and all these things. What's your view on ideological diversity? Do any of you support it? And none of them said they did. I had a full head of hair. Look at me now. I've been pulling out my hair over this craziness. We shouldn't have any ideological diversity. We should all march in lockstep. What kind of a university is that? It should be open to all shades of opinion.
Yes, and I think about the case of the great Thomas Sowell, as you've whom you've cited in chapter 12 too, in that he is in some ways a scourge in one form of diversity, but a laudable figure in this other form of diversity. He's of course a black academic, a genius who writes about economics and society and even psychology in one book, uh, and of course race and public policy. Yet, whenever the phrase "black academic" comes up in certain university circles, his name would virtually never come up. And within the Black intellectual circles, he's not invited yet to, I think, set up a uh, another like his very own Black intellectual circle, the Parkland Conference, in order to be invited in that one. So I suppose it is agreeable that this one form of diversity, ideological, philosophical, would work for men like Thomas Sowell, and would in fact be contributive to intellectual flourishing, whereas the other form is not.
Did I ever tell you my Thomas Sowell story?
Oh, do tell.
I edited a book and I asked them to be contributing to the book. And he wrote me saying, "Here's my article. If you change one word, I'm pulling the article out." Because he's had experience with editors who changed what he wrote. He didn't realize I was a big fan of his. And I wrote back saying, "Look, I found 5 typos. I got to change it. Is it okay?" And he said, "Okay." But he was very scared. Maybe that's not the right word, concerned that I would change the substance of what he's saying because he'd had bad experiences. He didn't realize I was a big fan of his, and I would never do that to him. I would never do that to anyone. That's despicable intellectually. By the way, when you mention Thomas Sowell, Walter Williams is another person whose name comes up, and I'd like to brag a little bit. I am a co-author of Walter Williams and sort of a friend of his. Even I once at a conference taught his daughter how to swim. I'm a pretty good swimmer, so I was. He's recently deceased, but I was a friend of his, a co-author of his. I also have maybe, oh, I don't know, maybe not a dozen black co-authors, mostly my students at Loyola. I mean, I have about 150 students uh, of Loyola who are my co-authors. What I do is I get their term papers, and sometimes I add to their term papers and co-author them with them. And about 10 of them, or maybe 12 of them, are black. So I really shouldn't say this because who cares what their skin color is? But we're on the topic, and I'm sort of proud of the fact that I have many black co-authors. Nothing wrong with that. But I didn't choose them because they were black. I chose them because what they wrote was very good. So I think that we should just, I mean, Martin Luther King, the great plagiarist, said that people should be judged on the basis not of their skin color, but of their character, their merit, their contribution. What's wrong with that? And yet, the word colorblind is like a curse word, like the F word for these lefties. If you're colorblind, you're evil. Uh, no, color blindness is important. Look, you have darker skin than I do. Who cares? It's just silly to be concerned about that. We should just look at people's merit, their contribution, and judge them on that basis.
Of course. And yeah, as someone who admires Martin Luther King Jr., I'm sure you do as well. I certainly don't believe that he originally came up with the phrase, humans should judge each other by the color of by the content of the characters, not the color of their skin. So that has
Oh,
been the basis of Christian social thinking in for years and years. Um, and one of the things that I think I've heard this from, people who are, ethnic minorities within America, and I think I would count myself too in the academic circle that just because you are part of a minority group, you have to think this and this and that. And uh, all the time I get people who are surprised that, I can't believe you as a Asian, Eastern, Vietnamese person would think this way. And I imagine that is the same sort of like unseen pressure that haunts great academics like Tom Sowell and Walter E. Williams when they are faced with this fact. I can't believe you think this way as a black person and whatnot. So I wonder if you being a Jewish person, has that ever occurred to you at all?
yeah, of course. I mean, Jews are supposed to be pinkos. I was brought up in Brooklyn, and the big issue was, do you carry a communist card or not, or are you just a fellow traveler of communists? There was nobody who was against communism, uh, and even nowadays, Jews are voting a Democratic Party. They voted much more for Kamala Harris than for Donald Trump. Even, I mean, look at what Donald Trump has done for Jews. He's moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He did the David Accords. He's trying to make peace in the Middle East. Half of his grandchildren are Jewish, and yet the Jews are, I won't say monolithically because there are exceptions. I mean, there's Murray Rothbard, there's Milton Friedman, there's Ludwig von Mises. There are famous Jews who are not lefties. But the overwhelming majority of Jews, especially the Reform Jews, are a bunch of pinkos. So, yes, people are saying, how can you as a Jew favor free enterprise? Milton Friedman once said, well, free enterprise has done more for Jews than maybe for any other group, because when we were not allowed to do this or that, we could engage in money lending or intermediation or whatever it was. So I think you're making an excellent point that uh, outliers, the Thomas Sowells and the Walter Williams, or the Murray Rothbards and the Milton Friedmans, are seen as, well, you're out of step. Look, why isn't Walter Williams at Harvard? He's as black as anyone. There's nobody more black than him on the skin color, but they don't want just any old black. They want a black who's a lefty. And it's the same thing for white. They don't want any old white or any old lesbian. If you get a lesbian who's a libertarian, they don't want her. They want a lefty who's a lesbian. They would prefer a straight person who is a lefty to a homosexual who is a libertarian.
Yeah. Well, since Catholicism was brought into the discussion, I think I can see the difference between the confirmation of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's a Jewish and a liberal, so the familiar type with Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who's a woman but a Catholic, and then Senator Feinstein said to her, "Well, the dogma lives loudly within you." It's just blatant anti-Catholicism right there. And of course, the confirmation of Thurgood Marshall and Clarence Thomas too. I mean, you compare that, you can see, what people think of, minority groups who are deviant, so to speak.
Oh no, Clarence Thomas, they're always trying to impeach him, not because he's black. Black is fine. It's because he's, a constitutionalist. We're almost out of time. I sort of devote an hour to this, and I'd like to talk about the very first chapter in this book,
Of
the
course. Yeah.
federal.
Yes.
The reason is we just had a visiting professor give a speech on federalism, and uh, so what's going on with federalism? What's going on with federalism is the Federalists say, look, let's have the federal government, let's have the state government, let's have local governments, let's have city governments. And the idea here is you'll have many laboratories. Just take the states. You have 50 states, 50 laboratories. And if one state does something bad and the other state does something good, we can learn from their experience. Whereas if we allow the federal government to do everything, uh, how will we ever learn whether some policy is a good one or a bad policy? So that's the case for federalism. Uh, I'm not a federalist nor an anti-federalist. What I am is a libertarian. Now, let me give you two cases. One case, Ronald Reagan, president, federalist, went to New York City and said, look, New York City, unless you get rent control, rid of rent control, I'm going to kick your butt. He didn't say it quite that way, but I'm going to penalize you to be more formal. Well, whose side do I take? I take the Federalist side because rent control is an economic abomination. It's a violation of rights. And just because the federal government says it doesn't mean that the federal government is wrong. He should stomp on New York City for having rent control. On the other hand, here's another case where Donald Trump, who I'm a big fan of, except for tariffs and except for this, he went to New York City. New York City recently instituted a peak load pricing system for cars. Namely, if you drive into Manhattan during rush hour, you have to pay an extra $10 or so. And what this did is it allowed traffic to move because otherwise you have traffic congestion, gigantic traffic congestion in Manhattan. And you know what they call the Long Island Expressway? It's about 100 miles. It's the longest parking lot in the world because it's just bumper to bumper traffic continually, or at least during waking hours. So here, I'm against the Federalists. So the way I look at it, it's not really a debate between Federalists and anti-Federalists. It's a debate between libertarians and everyone else. And when the federal government is libertarian, as was Ronald Reagan on rent control, we libertarians support federal government. And when the New York City did something right, vis-a-vis Donald Trump on peak load pricing, well, then we support the local. So it's a fallacious way to put the debate, whether you're a Federalist or a non-Federalist. The much better way is, are you a Libertarian or not? And libertarianism is always correct from the point of view of libertarianism. And therefore, we reject federalism and we reject anti-federalism.
I think that'd be a good way to conclude our discussion series on defending the undefendable. I'm told that you have another book called The Privatization of Roads and Highways, and
Oh,
that'll
I
be a
do. I
topic
do.
for a future discussion on this. So, as always, happy to welcome you, Walter Block, to the show, and I wish you a pleasant weekend, month.
Thank you. And I look forward again. We've had many sessions together, and I greatly appreciate your interviews. And I would love to do one on why we should privatize roads, streets, and highways. To just give your readers and listeners a hint, we now have in the US 40,000 people die on the highways, 40,000 people every year. To put that in context, how many people died in 9/11? Only 3,000. How many people died in Katrina? Only 1,900. This is 40,000 people every year who die. And I contend that it's all due to the fact that the government owns all the highways, federal and state. And if we had privatized roads, we would cut the death rate to smithereens. So I'll look forward to talking to you about that.
Okay, wonderful. All right, until next time.
Take care. Bye.